Oh, welcome back to Project Kermit. So having got to this point with a rolling chassis, the next milestone I want to head for is to install all the running gear. So that's the engine, the gearbox and, well, everything else. Now the gearbox and the prop shafts, which obviously go with it, are over in the corner of the shed there. The engine is still in the workshop and it arrived there under its own power. All I've done with the engine since extracting it from the Range Rover is put it on an engine stand and wheel it over and stuff into that corner where it's been ever since. Right in the way when I want to use the lathe. But other than that, I've pretty much forgotten about it. Generally, I'm not expecting to do very much to the engine at all because it was in fine fettle when it was in the Range Rover. It was everything else that fell apart in the Range Rover, but the engine was great. I will be doing a couple of things to it. I've got the kit here to do the cam belt, and I've also got a clutch kit because it's going to have some conversion on the engine to take it from the Range Rover Discovery layout, specification, whatever, to fit into a series. I'm going to use the guide that's published on Glencoyne Engineering. I'll leave a link in the description. It's a fantastic guide. In fact, the website's really good for all kinds of series Land Rover information. Now, I've just remembered more stuff I need to do to it actually. So, one of the modifications I need to make to the engine is to change this manifold. So I've got another manifold, I've got a replacement which is from a 300 TDI with its turbo, and when I've replaced it, it means that the manifold and the turbo sit in a slightly different position, and what that means is the exhaust downpipe will clear the chassis instead of trying to go straight for the middle of it. I've also got in my big stash of parts that I bought for this years and years ago, a new alternator and a brand new starter motor. And I'm not sure why I bought the new starter motor, because this thing, as you'll see in episode 0, started really easily. Didn't even mean to start it. So I may have bought this for the other Land Rover. Yeah, it's there if you need it. I might put it in anyway because, anyway. Before I do anything else though, I'm going to clean it. I'm going to have a go at using my steam cleaner. This is the steam cleaner. It's just a cheapo domestic thing, cleaning your kitchen or whatever. Might be completely inappropriate for this. I bought this just for one job, which was to when I had a wooden chicken house and an outbreak of mites. They were all living in the shiplap, in the panels, and the steam cleaner really sorted it out actually. I've hardly used it since. This is most of the oil and grime, and it's from a leaking rocker cover gasket, which is really common with these engines. That's nothing really to worry about. Then the other spot is here, so I think we've got a bit of a leak and the oil still that's in there, so I'll sort that out when I do the cam belt change. At least it still works. Well, that was, yeah. I got some degreaser here. Well, it's worth a try. I always wondered what it would be like on an engine, and I guess now I know. That's it, lovely and clean. So that was a combination of the pressure washer, the steam cleaner, and most effective thing, toothbrush. Toothbrush and degreaser. Don't worry, that's an engineering toothbrush, not a bathroom toothbrush. As I said before, this engine was in fine running condition before, so I'm not going to strip it down very much. What I will do is fix the leaks that we identified. So that's the back of the rocker cover. So there's a rocker cover seal, then there's what they call the half moons, one there and one at that end, and then some conical seals where the bolts go. So I'll replace all of those. While I've got the cover off, I'll do the valve clearances, just because that's going to be really easy to do with it, with plenty of access here. So I'll do the valve clearances as well. This manifold, that's got to come off and be swapped for the 300. I've got the clutch kit to fit, and I've got to modify the flywheel, not the flywheel housing somewhat to accept the series gearbox. That's reasonably straightforward. The most daunting thing there will be the cam bell. Now I have done that once before, but only once, and probably about 12 years ago. So I'll be following that website I mentioned, Glencoyne Engineering. That chap there has published a really handy guide on the cam belts. First thing will be to get this fan off. Now I notice I have jammed in an open-ended spanner here, so looks like I've had a go at this already at some point. I don't remember doing that. Talk about having a go at things. So this here, this is one of the benefits of giving it a good old clean. So down here I can see some sealant, and here loads of sealant. So somebody's had, this is the water pump in here, they've had that off, but also I can tell by here that it's had somebody's been at the cam belt, but of course I don't know when that was. And the thing is that the engine's been standing for ages anyway, so I think a cam belt change is definitely a sensible thing to do, and it's another thing that's much easier with the engine out of the vehicle. This is reverse threaded, which means I've got to try and do it up in order to make it come off, if that makes sense. And it's a viscous coupling, so that slips there, which is annoying. I'm going to try hitting it with a hammer. Yeah, of course it's moving, but so is the fan because of this viscous coupling. So. There we go. And then you can see that it's not quite the right spanner, is it? But it did the job. So fair play. Before I undo this, I've got to lock the shaft, and I need to make a tool to do that. I'll put it along a bit. There you go. That'd be perfect if it was a lot longer. The idea is to make something like this, but it's going to have to be longer. Drill a hole to go over that, and then drill some holes to pick up on these. Go on there like that. But obviously this one's not long enough. This looks about right, piece of unequal angle. Yes, that would be nicely, I think. 51, more or less. About 51. This is a pattern. Ooh. Well, there's something. I'm not sure if this will be noticeable to you, but you should at least be able to hear that. That's masses of play. That's not this, it's not this pulley, that's the whole shaft. This is the water pump in here. Yeah, and that's knackered. I'm really glad I noticed that, because it was a Duff water pump, a Brit Park replacement water pump that did for my last 200. But yeah, that's totally shot. Nice and sunny today, so I thought I'd do a bit of outside work. I'm going to fit the shock absorbers and the bump stops. These shock absorbers are specified for the, I think they're 1 ton shock absorbers, and I think they're oil filled. I say I think with this because I bought these years ago. There was a reason I bought this specification and not just standard 109, but I can't remember what that reason was. Anyway, I seem to remember they're oil filled rather than gas filled. So I'm going to fully extend them and compress them a few times, just to get everything, get the oil moving. That one, that's a rear. These were stored in a filing cabinet and they've obviously been infiltrated by a mouse. Look at that. Fortunately, shock absorbers are not edible, so they've not been nibbled. Yeah, look at that. So that just, I think it is a good idea to let them through a bit. So down here it's the same type of cone-shaped rubbers, but the retaining is done just with a split pin, which is easy enough. I've got a box of split pins. So it'll be something like that, massive great thing that goes through there, but also a big washer, and I haven't got any washers with a hole that big. So I'm going to try and drill out one of these. I've at least got a step drill, which will make it a little bit easier. Yeah, it's going to work. Oh, it's going to work. Where is it? Oh, really? Oh. Yay, we're in. Whew. Good. So in case anyone's wondering, and I know I was, there's two sides of the washer and this lump of rubber. So the big washer first, then the rubber, then the smaller washer, then it goes in place, and then underneath we go small one, and then the rubber, big one, and then the nut. getting the nut started is, if you just put a couple more turns on the thread, it would have been, so yep. It's just getting it started, that's the tricky bit. Yes, we're on there now. Excellent, that will do. Good. That's all that. Bump stops next, that's these things. These are just rubber blocks which go there. And it's a sort of suspension of last resort, I think you can call it. Same again on the other side. I've got a replacement water pump. So I did a quick bit of research and the Airtex brand seemed to be the best from what people were saying, and it's probably the actual original manufacturer, the OEM part, probably. It's certainly a lot nicer than the one that came off. So that's the next job. So first thing then is get this off of here. I've got quite a nice breaker bar, but I'm tempted to try it with this T-bar first because this is already bent. If I can actually straighten it out, that would be a bonus. My locking tool there goes all the way from here down to the ground, and that should provide enough leverage to hold the engine steady, as long as the engine stand doesn't collapse. That would be dramatic. I'll have a lot of tension in there. I think I'm just moving the bar, aren't I? Yeah, look at that, it's almost straight. Okay, not really what I was after. Let's hope then that the breaker bar is made of sterner stuff. This is only a half-inch drive, that's the well, maybe I should have bought bigger kit. Yeah, I think this is going to break. Oh, what's happening? I think it might be moving. The brake bar isn't broken. Yeah, I reckon that's moving. It's looking like it's going to work. Oh yeah, that's it. Phew. There we go. Good. Now I can take this off, and it's this balancer. That's got to come off next. Oh, that's great. That worked without any drama at all, which I was fully anticipating. This damper wheel's got to come off next. And again, following the advice from the Glencoin website, I bought this dirt cheap harmonic balance puller set. So if I set that up there, I should just be able to pull that off. Well, it's possible. Think about it. Or I could just do that. Oh, I'll keep that for next time. It was only a tenner. Yeah, someone's been in here before. We've got a tough one there. I'm no expert, but there's more oil there than I'd like. It's a good job I got the oil seals of it. I'm assuming the oil that's in here is coming from the seal behind here. So yeah, so the front, that'd be the front crank seal, wouldn't it? I'm also going to change the camshaft seal as well. But yes, we'll get into all of that in a moment. Today's manual is the Haynes Land Rover Discovery manual, which is the closest I've got for this engine. Well, I mean, it does cover this engine. I'm going to lock the flywheel next using the reversing switch that I've just bought. This gearbox reversing switch is a substitute for the official Land Rover tool. So this will screw in down here in the flywheel casing, and the pin in it is actually spring loaded because it's a reversing switch. So as I turn the engine over, we should hear a click, and that will be the flywheel locked in the right position. There's a notch just there in the flywheel. That's interesting. That clicked in, but the notch I was looking at is there. Yeah, there's another notch. That's interesting. Can we put that in there? We can. So that's probably it. This notch here in the flywheel is engaged with the pin from the reversing switch, and at the same time, I can get a 9.5mm drill bit in that slot there, pass the pulley into the back of it, which is the other timing point. As far as I can tell, that's the position that the engine needs to be in and stay in during all this change. But I'm going to double check by moving it around until that other notch engages, just to see. So we're now in the second notch. Let's see if this engages. No. That's what I expected to be. So let's see. Yeah. That's it, good. Down here we have the third point of reference. So that arrow there aligns with that key, which is correct. Fourth point of reference is here. So there's this part of the web of the casing has to align with that dot. So there's a punch dot in this pulley wheel, which is also correct. It's a bit of faff, but now we're ready to move on to the next bit, which will be pulling all this apart. Yeah. There's little O-rings in here, which I don't have new replacements for, which is a bit concerning, but come off with it. Yeah, so we've got an O-ring in there, and there was one on the bolt itself. One just slide off like that. So it looks like this cheapo puller will come in handy after all. Got to remember when it goes back to put the dot there. So this seal's got to come out. That seal looks fine actually. Oh well, come this far. There we go. Looks better. Big lump of brass. That's it. Sorted. That looks a bit better. So the second oil seal then, let's get that out. I'm fully aware that there is a proper tool for this. But there we go. I should do the same as before, I just put a bit of grease in there. At least, no, that's weird. Straight in that. Splendid. Now, let's not put it back together. So there's a punch dot there, which I'm going to put there, which is where it would go anyway because that hasn't really moved. So almost ready to fit the new belt. This was the recommended brand for the belt, which I think is the original equipment manufacturer. I must say it does feel considerably more flexible than the one that came off. Before I fit this though, I'm going to clean off all the old gasket on here because all those bits are going to fall in here, so good time to do it. So I'm using a very sharp stainless steel scraper, which I find to be the best thing to do this with. Nice new one. There. And I've got my new tensioning pulley, let's call it. That's probably its right name. It's going to go in. There's a peg here for it to sit on. This thing here is a torque wrench, but a proper old school one. I remember my dad having one of these when I was tiny. I always assumed they were pretty inaccurate, but this is what it says you need to use to set the tension. So when I pull on this, there's a plate at the back of this pulley which goes up and puts more tension on there. So there's set this scale on here to 0, and then I need to tension it to 15. Bloody hell, I'm pulling it off now. Alright, so we're doing starting to 0, going up to 15. That's 15 there. Now, because everything's locked, yeah, this should tighten to full tension without breaking. I'll leave that one because I'm going to undo that and check all this in a moment. Take that pin out the back. What I'm going to do now is turn the engine over twice and then make sure that all the alignment marks line up again. And make this key line up with this arrow. And then, yeah, that's there. That's good as well. Yes. That's all good. So now, I've got to retension the belt. Yeah, so that's it there, 15. That's it. Yes, so that's complete. It's done. It's not difficult, but it's finicky. You've got to be, yes, careful with it, I'd say. So just for any possible non-technical people watching, the reason all this is so important, so critical, and it is critical with the timing belt, is because if the timing belt was to break, or if it was just to be in the wrong position, so if this pulley had a different relationship to this pulley than what I've very carefully set for it, then when this is turning, which is the crankshaft, which is the main thing that the engine powers, is this crankshaft, which goes through the back there, through the clutch to drive the wheels. This is, by this timing belt, driving this, which is the camshaft, and making all the valves jump up and down in the engine. If this goes at the wrong timing to this, relative to this, then the piston can come up just as the valve is coming down to open, and boom, that's your engine possibly done for, but at least out of service. The other thing is, once all this is fitted in the vehicle, it's a lot harder to faff about with, so I wanted to get it right first time. I think I eventually have. So now I've just got this gasket to fit, which has actually been processed for mouse bedding at the end. Thankfully they didn't get to the gasket itself. Not that it's expensive, but it would have been irritating. So I can swing this gasket on, get the cover fitted, and then it's time for the new water pump. The other thing I don't have is this seal here. That one, but that's only a dust seal. It's not a critical, well, it's not, it's reasonably important, but it's yes, it's nowhere near as important as those two. So look what I found when I was tidying up. It's a little bag with the missing seals. So in this bag we've got seal and those two O-rings from there, which is great. And there was a moment of concern when I thought this seal might be the crankshaft seal. But I got the magnifying glass out and read the code number on there, and it is actually the dust seal. It's the one I was on about that goes in here. If I hadn't decided to tidy up at just that moment, I'd never have discovered them, because they were about over there. One, and the little one is squidged on the bolt. Yes, glad I found that, and very good timing. Cool. I did not want to come out of there. Right. Looking at it, the only critical sealing part is here where there's a water passage, but because my gasket's not in very good shape, I mean it's fine, it's just a bit broken. I'm going to put the merest trace of sealant all the way around. So I can position the gasket and it should hold it in somewhat in place. Bit more mess. So just the tiniest trace around everywhere else apart from that water passage where I put a reasonable amount. Right, so there's a dowel down there and there's one there, so I'm waiting for those first. Felt very positive. Now that should stick to that. And that way round, that goes through there, and goes through there. So the cover, this part, and the water pump, this part, are properly tightened up now, and you can see that it's just a trace amount of sealant coming out. So that's correct. No point at all having excess spilling out, it just means it's just as likely to be on the other side going into the engine. The last thing to do is to re-tighten up this bolt here to an incredible amount of torque, which my torque wrench can't do. I'm going to try and use the same way of locking the engine to do it up. Well, that reminds me, I'll have to take that. I'm going to take the pin out the back of the engine before I break it. Pin on in rather than the engine. What I'm wondering is if I can put this on this side. No, because I put a water pump in the way. I'll put some thread lock on before I put it in there. Good. Let's see how tight we can get it. I'm not going to use a torque wrench. I think it goes up to the actual tension that's supposed to be on here is something absurd. I'll look it up for it. Right, so it's 340 Newton meters or 251 foot-pounds. My torque wrench goes up to about 150, so all I'm going to do is crank it up as much as I can. Yeah, that's pretty tight. This one on here. do the valve clearances next while I've got really easy access to them. Just enough. I can use the same socket to turn the engine over. What I'm going to do is get this one fully open, so fully all the way down. So with number 1 fully down, we check number 8. So rule of 9, 1 plus 8 equals 9, and then work our way on from there. So as I'm sure you all know, it has to drag. You have to be able to feel it dragging the feeler gauge, but not pinching it. Hard to tell. Yeah, there we go. That's it there. I won't be able to screw down. Tighten that up. Double check. Yes. Done. Good. That's all sorted. One thing I don't have, which I've ordered, is more of these tiny little rubber things that go in the end here. This like that. I just happen to have a genuine replacement in these stores. Oh yeah, that's loads more flexible. I'm pretty sure it's going to go one way up. Yes. Just feels much nicer actually than the one that just came out of there. So that's that. Right, let's see what's on the other side. So I'll just leave this loose on. What should I do? I'll put these in. But not the bolts. Slight change of plan for the next bit. I was going to fit the manifolds with the 300 TDI turbo and all that on here, but it's occurred to me there's no actual advantage to doing it now as opposed to doing it when the engine is sat in the chassis. And it might even be a little bit easier to manoeuvre it about without the manifolds on. So I'm going to leave those. What I'll do next then is clear some space on the bench and then lift up the engine off the engine stand, put it on the bench and get some access to the back here so I can sort out the clutch. Very tiny at the time. Right, sort out this end next.